There are several ways to stop an RC car for the day. Over the years, Wyatt has discovered some rather interesting ones. Jumping 30 feet into a park bench is one way. Driving flat out into a pole is another. That repair video will be out soon, by the way. On this occasion, Wyatt decided to rip the positive wire completely out of his LiPo battery connector, because he is, of course, a savage animal. Fortunately, the battery itself appears to be fine, and this is something we should be able to repair rather than replacing the entire pack. These GROM batteries use a Spektrum IC2 connector. More specifically, this is the battery side IC2 connector. It's a compact connector designed for smaller RC applications, and on these Spektrum smart batteries, it handles both the main battery connection and the smart electronics. Today, we're going to remove what's left of the damaged connection, clean everything up, solder the connector back on, put everything back together, and find out whether Wyatt has successfully killed a LiPo battery. Spoiler alert, he hasn't. At least, not this time. Before we touch any of this, though, a quick word about LiPo batteries. They deserve some respect. Unlike soldering a connector onto a motor or an ESC, the wires we're working with are connected to a battery that is very much alive. There is no off switch. Short the positive and negative wires together, and the battery is quite capable of delivering an enormous amount of current almost instantly. And enormous amounts of current tend to make tools, wires, and occasionally workbenches considerably more exciting than we'd like. So we're going to work on one wire at a time, keep the exposed conductor under control, and make absolutely certain the positive and negative leads never touch each other. If a battery is swollen, punctured, physically damaged, unusually hot, or otherwise questionable, this isn't the time to try rescuing it. Replace the battery. No RC car is worth setting fire to the garage. Our first job is getting rid of the damaged section. The positive wire has been pulled out, leaving us with some mangled wire and the remains of the original connection. Rather than trying to salvage the damaged end, we're simply going to cut it back to clean wire. We also want the positive and negative leads to remain approximately the same length. That isn't terribly important electrically over a distance this short, but it keeps everything tidy and prevents one wire from carrying all the strain when the connector is plugged in. The important part here is that we're not cutting both wires at the same time. That would be a remarkably efficient way of putting a pair of metal cutters directly across a LiPo battery. And while it would certainly make the video more dramatic, it isn't the sort of engagement we're looking for. So, one conductor at a time. We cut it, control it, and make sure nothing exposed can reach the other terminal. With the damaged section removed, we can strip back just enough insulation for the connector. We don't want half an inch of bare copper hanging out here. We only need enough exposed wire to make a solid solder joint. Once the insulation is removed, we'll give the strands a quick twist to keep everything together. And again, that exposed wire is live, so we'll treat it accordingly. Next comes one of the steps that makes this entire job considerably easier: flux and pre-tinning. We'll start by applying a little flux to the exposed wire. Flux helps the solder flow properly and gives us a much cleaner joint instead of forcing solder onto oxidized copper and hoping for the best. Then we'll pre-tin the wire. All that means is heating the conductor and allowing solder to flow into the strands before we try attaching it to the connector. We want the solder to soak into the copper without turning half the wire into a rigid stick. We're looking for good saturation right at the end. We'll also make sure the contact on the IC2 connector is properly prepared. Having solder already on both surfaces means that when they come together, we don't need to spend ages pumping heat into the connector. That's particularly useful here because the connector housing is plastic. Plastic and prolonged contact with a soldering iron traditionally have a rather poor relationship. With the wire positioned against the terminal and both surfaces already tinned, we only need enough heat to allow the solder to flow together. Once it does, we remove the heat and hold everything still. We don't want the wire moving around while the solder cools. A good solder joint should look smooth and properly flowed into both pieces. If we've created something resembling a small metallic potato sitting on top of the connector, a little more flux and another attempt may be in order. We're looking for an actual electrical and mechanical connection here, not modern art. Once the joint has cooled, we'll give the wire a gentle pull. Not enough to recreate Wyatt's original testing procedure, just enough to make sure the connection is mechanically secure. With the soldering finished, we can reinstall the back of the IC2 connector. This piece isn't merely decorative. It helps support and locate the wires so the solder joints aren't taking all of the mechanical load every time the battery gets connected and disconnected. We want everything sitting naturally inside the housing. No pinched insulation, no exposed conductor where it shouldn't be, and no wire being forced sideways against the solder joint. And now, at least visually, we've gone from a battery with a wire hanging out of it to something that looks suspiciously like a battery again. Progress. Before we throw it back into the GROM and immediately attempt to jump over something inappropriate, we're going to test it. First, another visual inspection. Correct polarity. No exposed copper. Connector fully assembled. Nothing loose. Everything looks good. Now we can connect the battery and make sure the repair actually works. And we've got power. So, despite Wyatt's best efforts, this ARRMA GROM battery lives to fight another day. The connector is secure, the battery works normally, and we've saved a perfectly usable LiPo pack over what amounted to one broken connection.